Ruthless bikers block a fire truck. What the firefighters do next leaves them screaming. The city pulsed with life, a teeming metropolis where dreams were born and crushed in equal measure. Amid the towering skyscrapers and bustling streets, a sinister force had taken root. The Hellhounds, a ruthless biker gang that ruled through fear and intimidation. Leroy Pitbull Jackson, the Hellhounds' merciless leader, revved his Harley's engine as he led his pack through the heart of downtown. Clad in leather and chains, they roared past stop signs and weaved through traffic, daring anyone to challenge their authority. Citizens scurried out of their way like frightened mice. On 5th and Main, a fire truck's sirens wailed urgently as it sped towards a raging apartment blaze across town. Inside the cab, Captain Aidan O'Connor gripped the wheel tightly, his jaw clenched with determination. Lives hung in the balance, and every second mattered. But as the fire truck approached the intersection, the Hellhounds poured in from all sides, encircling it like a pack of snarling predators. With a cruel smirk, Pitbull raised his hand, signaling his gang to block the truck's path. "What the hell are they doing?" Lieutenant Marcus Spencer shouted from the passenger seat. "They're deliberately obstructing us." Aidan slammed on the brakes, barely avoiding a collision. He looked around desperately as more bikers filled in the gaps, trapping the fire truck in a sea of chrome and rumbling exhaust pipes. "I don't care who they think they are," Aidan growled. "We have a job to do and lives to save." He leaned on the horn, the piercing blare ripping through the air. But the Hellhounds only revved their engines louder in response, drowning out the sirens' wail with their thunderous roar. As precious minutes ticked by and smoke billowed in the distance, a tense standoff ensued between the resolute firefighters and the arrogant gang. Little did the Hellhounds know, their cruelty and callousness had set the stage for a clash that would soon rock the very foundations of their brutal reign. Across town, Luisa Ramirez peered anxiously out her 4th-floor apartment window, her heart racing as she watched flames engulf the neighboring building. Thick black smoke poured from shattered windows, and the agonized screams of trapped residents punctured the chaos. Luisa reached for her phone with trembling hands. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she punched in 911 for the 3rd time. "Please," she begged the operator. "The fire is spreading fast. Where are the firefighters?" In the halls of Fire Station 23, the firefighters gathered around the dispatch radio, their faces grim. "Truck 51 is still stuck at 5th and Main," reported a static-laden voice. "Biker gang interference." Aidan's younger brother Liam, a rookie firefighter, slammed his fist against the wall. "We can't just sit here while people are dying," he cried. "We'll find a way," said Aidan firmly, though doubt gnawed at him. The Hellhounds' chokehold on the city ran deep. For years, the gang had operated with impunity, cowing politicians and police alike. But now, as innocent lives hung in the balance, their reign of terror had reached a tipping point. At the blockade, Aidan racked his brain for a solution. The Hellhounds outnumbered them 3-1, and any attempt to force their way through could turn deadly. Time was running out. Then, in a moment of desperate inspiration, Aidan leaped down from the truck and approached Pitbull slowly, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. Marcus watched anxiously from the cab, ready to back up his captain at a moment's notice. "Look," said Aidan, his voice steady. "I get it. You're the kings of these streets. But this isn't about turf or power anymore. There are children trapped in that burning building. They'll die if we don't get there fast." Pitbull sneered, unmoved. "And what's that got to do with us?" "Everything," Aidan pressed. "This is your city too, your community. You have a chance here to be more than just some street thugs. Show everyone that you don't let innocent kids burn." The tension hung thick as Pitbull stared Aidan down. The other bikers shifted uneasily, unsure. In that moment, a flicker of doubt crossed Pitbull's face, the briefest glimpse of the man he once was, before the streets had hardened his heart. "Fine," Pitbull spat at last. "We'll let you through. But don't think this changes anything, hero. The streets are still ours." With a curt nod, Pitbull signaled the Hellhounds to clear a path. Aidan scrambled back into the truck as the gang's bikes grudgingly parted. The fire truck tore through the opening, sirens blaring. Yet even as they raced towards the inferno, Aiden knew this small victory was just the beginning. To truly save his city, he would need to spark a change far greater than any single fire. A transformation that could only be forged in the crucible of courage and community. The fire truck screeched to a halt before the blazing apartment complex, disgorging Aiden and his team onto the smoke-choked street. Geared up and armed with hoses, they charged into the fray, determined to rescue as many lives as they could. Amidst the roaring flames, Aiden fought his way to the fourth floor, his senses heightened by adrenaline. Muffled cries for help guided him to a soot-stained door. With a mighty kick, he splintered the wood and burst into the apartment, his eyes stinging from the thick smoke. There, huddled in a corner, he found Louisa and her 2 young children, coughing and terrified. "It's okay," Aiden assured them, his voice muffled by his oxygen mask. "I'm here to get you out." With practiced efficiency, Aiden scooped up the kids and led Louisa to the window, where a ladder truck waited below. As they climbed to safety, the building shuddered ominously, weakened by the raging inferno. On the ground, Liam and Marcus worked in tandem, directing residents to triage and battling back the encroaching flames. But for every life saved, the fire claimed another piece of the building, belching black smoke into the sky like a malevolent entity. Hours later, the last embers finally died under a deluge of water and foam. Aiden and his team emerged from the smoldering ruins, their faces streaked with soot, their bodies aching with exhaustion. But in their eyes shone the fierce light of triumph, the knowledge that they had done their duty and saved lives. As they trudged back to the truck, a small crowd of onlookers gathered, their faces filled with gratitude and awe. Louisa stepped forward, tears in her eyes, and pulled Aiden into a fierce hug. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You saved us. You're heroes." Aiden shook his head humbly. "We were just doing our job, ma'am. That's what we're here for." But as he looked around at the gathered residents, tired, broken, yet unbowed, Aiden felt a flicker of something more. These were his people, his community, and they deserved better than living under the thumb of the hellhounds. They deserved a city where they could thrive without fear, where kids could play in the streets and families could build lives together. Slowly, an idea began to take shape in Aiden's mind. It was risky, perhaps even foolish, but as he thought back to his confrontation with Pitbull, he knew he had to try. The hellhounds were just men, after all. Men who had lost their way, hardened by the cruelty of the streets. If he could reach them, make them see the pain they caused, maybe he could start to turn the tide. And so, as dawn broke over the city's jagged skyline, Aiden set his jaw and gathered his crew. They had a new mission now, one that would push them to their limits and beyond. To save their city, they would have to do more than fight fires. They would have to light the spark of change itself, one act of courage at a time. The real battle for the soul of the city had only just begun. Days turned into weeks, and the firefighters of Station 23 found themselves thrust onto the front lines of a different kind of war, a battle for the heart and soul of their city. Aiden led the charge, using every spare moment to reach out to the community, to listen to their stories and understand their struggles. He organized neighborhood watch groups and youth mentorship programs, determined to give people the tools they needed to stand up to the hellhounds' intimidation. At first, progress was slow. The gang's grip on the streets ran deep, and many residents were too afraid to speak out, let alone fight back. But Aiden and his crew refused to give up. They attended town hall meetings and rallied support from local businesses, building a network of allies united by a common cause. Even Louisa found herself drawn into the fight. Grateful for the firefighters' bravery and inspired by Aiden's vision, she began volunteering at the firehouse, helping to organize community events and spread the word about their efforts. Yet as their movement gained traction, the hellhounds began to take notice. Pitbull, enraged by what he saw as a challenge to his authority, unleashed a campaign of escalating violence and retribution. Businesses that supported the firefighters found their windows smashed, their owners threatened. Residents who spoke out against the gang were beaten and harassed. Through it all, Aiden and his team held fast to their convictions. even as the danger mounted. They knew that every act of defiance, no matter how small, chipped away at the Hellhound's aura of invincibility. And slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. In quiet moments, Aiden found himself drawn to Luisa's quiet strength and compassion. As they worked side by side, a bond began to form between them, a connection forged in the crucible of shared struggle and hope. Yet even as his heart swelled with newfound feelings, Aiden knew he could not let himself be distracted from the fight ahead. For the Hellhounds, too, were watching and waiting, their anger building to a boiling point. Pitbull, driven half-mad by the threat to his power, began to lash out in increasingly reckless ways, targeting not just the firefighters and their allies, but anyone who dared to stand in his way. It all came to a head on a sweltering summer night, as Aiden and his crew responded to yet another emergency call. This time, it was a car accident. A single vehicle wrapped around a telephone pole, the driver trapped inside. But as they worked to free the victim, the Hellhounds descended like a pack of wolves, armed and furious. "You just don't learn, do you?" Pitbull snarled, leveling a gun at Aiden's chest. "This is our city, our rules, and it's time you heroes learned your place." Aiden froze, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew he should be afraid, staring down the barrel of a gun. But in that moment, all he could feel was a sudden, piercing clarity, an understanding of what he had to do. Slowly, deliberately, he stepped forward, placing himself between Pitbull and his fallen crew. "No," he said, his voice ringing out clear and strong. "This ends now." What happened next would be seared into the memories of all who witnessed it, a moment of raw courage and defiance that would change the city forever. The tension crackled like electricity in the air as Aiden faced down Pitbull, unarmed and unafraid. Around them, the other Hellhounds shifted uneasily, their loyalty to their leader warring with a growing sense of unease. "You think you're some kind of hero?" Pitbull sneered, his finger twitching on the trigger. "You think you can take us down? We're the Hellhounds, man. We run this city." Aiden shook his head slowly, his eyes never leaving Pitbull's. "You're wrong," he said, his voice steady. "This city doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the people, the families, the kids, the ones just trying to build a life. And they're done living in fear of you." Pitbull barked a harsh laugh. "Fear is power, man. That's how we survive out here. Ain't nobody gonna stand up to us." But even as he spoke, a flicker of doubt crossed Pitbull's face. In the weeks since the firefighters had begun their campaign, something had changed on the streets. The Hellhounds' hold on the neighborhood was slipping, and Pitbull could feel it like a noose tightening around his neck. Aiden pressed his advantage, taking another step forward. "Look around you," he said, gesturing to the gathered crowd of onlookers. "Look at their faces. They're not afraid of you anymore. They're standing together like a community should. And that's something you can't beat, no matter how many guns you have." Pitbull's eyes darted to the crowd, and for the first time he really saw them. Not just faceless targets to be cowed and controlled, but people, with hopes and dreams and a fierce determination to protect what was theirs. And in that moment, something shifted inside him, a flicker of doubt, a glimmer of the man he once was. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Pitbull lowered his gun. The other Hellhounds exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what to do. And then, from somewhere in the crowd, a voice rang out, a single word, spoken with quiet conviction. "Enough!" It was Luisa, stepping forward to stand beside Aiden. Her eyes blazed with a fierce, unwavering courage as she looked Pitbull dead in the eye. "Enough!" she repeated, her voice growing stronger. "We're done being afraid. We're done letting you terrorize our streets. This is our city, and we're taking it back." Around her, other voices joined in, first one, then a dozen, then 100. The crowd surged forward, united in their resolve. Their fear transformed into something far more powerful: hope. Faced with the full force of the community's defiance, the Hellhounds faltered. One by one, they lowered their weapons, their faces filled with a dawning realization. They had been beaten not by force of arms, but by something far stronger, the unbreakable bonds of a people united. In that moment, as the last gun clattered to the ground, Aiden felt a surge of pride and love for his city, for the people who had stood with him through the darkest of times. And as he turned to face Louisa, he saw in her eyes the same fierce, unquenchable spirit that had carried them all through the storm. They had won more than just a battle, he knew. They had lit the spark of something far greater, a transformation that would ripple out from this moment, changing the fabric of the city itself. It wouldn't be easy, and there would be setbacks and challenges still to come. But together, as a community, they would face them head-on, armed with the knowledge that they were stronger than any force that sought to tear them apart. And so, as the sun began to rise over the city's jagged skyline, Aiden and Louisa stood hand in hand, gazing out at the new dawn. The fight was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, they dared to hope, to believe in a future where their city could thrive, where their children could grow up without fear, where the bonds of community could weather any storm. It was a future worth fighting for, and fight they would together, as one, until the very end. In the weeks that followed the Hellhound's surrender, the city underwent a transformation that could only be described as miraculous. It was as if a great weight had been lifted from its shoulders, a dark cloud parting to reveal the bright promise of a new day. Aiden and his crew threw themselves into the task of rebuilding, not just the physical structures damaged by years of neglect and violence, but the very fabric of the community itself. They organized neighborhood cleanup projects and skill-sharing workshops, bringing people together to share their knowledge and resources. Louisa, too, played a vital role in the city's rebirth. Drawing on her own experiences as a struggling single mother, she spearheaded initiatives to support families in need, from job training programs to after-school tutoring for kids. Her passion and compassion inspired others to follow her lead, and soon, a network of community leaders had emerged, each dedicated to lifting up their neighbors and forging a brighter future together. Even the Hellhounds, to everyone's surprise, began to change. Stripped of their power and mystique, many of the gang members found themselves adrift, unsure of their place in this new world. But Aiden and his team refused to give up on them. They reached out to the former gang members, offering them a chance at redemption, a way to channel their energy and skills into something positive. Some, like Pitbull, were resistant at first, too deeply entrenched in the old ways to imagine a different path. But others, drawn by the promise of a fresh start and a sense of purpose, began to come around. They joined the neighborhood watch groups and volunteered at the community center, slowly but surely earning back the trust and respect of the people they had once terrorized. As the months passed, the city began to thrive in ways it never had before. New businesses opened up, drawn by the buzz of positive change and the strong sense of community that now permeated every street corner. Parks and playgrounds, once abandoned and overgrown, now echoed with the laughter of children at play. And everywhere, there was a palpable sense of pride and ownership, a feeling that this was a city on the rise, a place where anything was possible. For Aiden and Louisa, the journey was one of personal growth and discovery as well. As they worked side by side, their bond deepened into something more than just friendship or shared purpose. They found in each other a source of strength and inspiration, a partner in both the struggles and the triumphs that lay ahead. And so, as the city celebrated its first anniversary of freedom from the Hellhound's reign, Aiden found himself standing before a crowd of thousands, his heart swelling with pride and gratitude. He looked out at the sea of faces, at the people who had become more than just his neighbors or his charges, but his family. "We did this," he said, his voice ringing out clear and strong. "Not me, not any one person, but all of us together. We took back our city, not through force or fear, but through the power of our unity, our compassion, our unwavering belief in the goodness of our community." The crowd erupted in cheers, a joyous sound that seemed to fill the very air itself. And as Aiden stood there, hand in hand with Louisa, he knew that this was only the beginning. There would be challenges still to come, obstacles to overcome and battles to be fought. But they would face them together, armed with the knowledge that they were part of something greater than themselves, a force for change that could not be stopped. And so, As the sun began to set over the city's gleaming towers, Aiden and Louisa turned to face the future, their hearts full of hope and their spirits unbroken. They had learned the true meaning of courage, not as the absence of fear, but as the will to act in spite of it. And in that courage, they had found the strength to transform not just their city, but themselves, forever. Years passed, and the city that had once been a battleground became a beacon of hope and resilience, a shining example of what could be achieved when a community came together in the spirit of unity and compassion. Aiden and Louisa, now married and with children of their own, continued to lead the charge, their love for each other and for their city only growing stronger with each passing day. They watched with pride as their kids grew up in a world so different from the one they had known, a world where fear and violence had given way to opportunity and joy. The firefighters of Station 23 remained the heart and soul of the community, their bravery and selflessness an inspiration to all who knew them. They responded to emergencies with the same fierce dedication they always had, but now, they did so with the knowledge that they were part of something greater, a tapestry of mutual support and care that stretched across every corner of the city. Even the hellhounds, once the scourge of the streets, found a new purpose in this changed world. Under the guidance of reformed leaders like Pitbull, they channeled their energy into positive pursuits, becoming mentors and role models for the next generation. They taught the values of hard work and loyalty, the importance of standing up for what was right, even in the face of adversity. As for the city itself, it became a place of wonder and possibility, a testament to the transformative power of hope and unity. Its streets, once haunted by fear and despair, now pulsed with life and laughter. Its parks and plazas became gathering places for families and friends, spaces where the bonds of community could be forged and strengthened. And at the heart of it all, like a beacon in the night, stood the old firehouse, now a symbol of everything the city had overcome and everything it had become. It was here that Aiden and Louisa gathered their loved ones on warm summer evenings, sharing stories and dreams under the glow of the setting sun. They spoke of the challenges they had faced and the battles they had won, of the moments of doubt and despair that had tested their resolve. But mostly, they spoke of the future, of the endless possibilities that lay ahead, of the world they were building together, one act of kindness and courage at a time. And as the laughter and the love flowed like a gentle river, Aiden looked around at the faces of those he held dear, and he knew that this was what it meant to be truly rich, truly blessed. For in the end, it was not the accolades or the achievements that mattered most, but the simple, profound joy of being part of something greater than oneself, of knowing that one's life had made a difference in the lives of others. And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars began to twinkle in the sky, Aiden raised his glass in a silent toast to the city that had made him who he was, to the people who had stood by his side through the darkest of times, and to the love that had sustained him and given him strength. To hope, he said, his voice soft but filled with conviction. To courage, to the unbreakable bonds of community. May they guide us and guard us, now and forever. And as the chorus of voices joined in, rising like a prayer into the night, Aiden knew that he had found his true calling, his true home. For in the end, it was here, in the heart of the city he loved, that he had learned the most profound lesson of all, that in the face of fear and darkness, it was the light of human connection, of love and compassion, that would always shine the way.